Hello and welcome to video number 3, which focuses on tip number 3. Know how long your task should take. The benefits of knowing this gives you a greater chance of meeting your task deadline. It helps you plan and control your day, and you are less likely to spend too long on one task instead of moving on to another. We usually underestimate how long it's going to take us to do something, and then we can spend more time on the task. We don't get other things done. And this gives us a feeling that our day is kind of running away from us. So we may have planned to do a certain amount of tasks and then we don't get them done. And that can cause that feeling of not being in control. It also gives us a frustrated feeling, and the stress and the overwhelm can overtake us. As other tasks pile up, that causes anxiety. And it often means that we end up working late to finish what we wanted to get done. So let's look at how to estimate our time tasks. I know when I work with people on this, particularly in the tech industry, people say, well, it's really hard to estimate how long something's going to take because everything can take a different amount of time. And each time we do it, it's different. So, what you want to do is build up your knowledge of the types of tasks that you're working on and reflect when you do something how long it took you. So, start to build your knowledge of the different categories of tasks that you work on and roughly how long each one should take. To help you estimate, it's good to break a task down into the different steps that you perform to complete it. So you may be able to break it down into the first thing you do, then the next thing, then the next thing. So by breaking it down into smaller pieces, that gives you a better chance of putting a time frame against each of those smaller steps. And then once you've broken it down, you can start to identify the really core steps, the essential steps, the things that have to be done to deliver the task or to fix the problem. And then there may be some steps that are kind of additional and nice to have steps that we often add in because we want to do a 100% complete job. But if the time is really tight and you have to move on to something else, you could maybe drop that extra nice to have step. Using a timer really helps you. So if you have an estimate of a time frame, you just have an idea in your head and say, this usually takes me half an hour. So put a timer on for those 30 minutes. And then when you get engrossed in the task, we often lose track of time. But the timer will remind you, and then you can make a decision. Have I done enough on this task to deliver it, to give the information to whoever needs it? Can I now move on to something else? Which is the more important thing to do? Should I spend longer on this task? Or actually, are there other things now piling up that are higher priority? So, have I done enough on this one to move on to the next one? Often we spend too long on the task because, as I say, we're trying to perfect it. We're trying to hit 100% every time. We're fearful of not achieving the standard. We want to do a little bit more to make it better. Or maybe we're not clear of what is expected, of what is the 100% answer. And if that's the case, we should seek additional information rather than spending more and more time. So, if we find we're spending too long on things, try to reflect and learn yourself why it is you're spending longer than you estimate. Or maybe it's your team leader expects you to spend less time and you find things are taking you longer. Try and ask yourself why. Is it because it's taking you a while to get started? Maybe you don't have clarity about what needs to be done, and can you do anything about that? But if it's because we're trying to perfect it, well, then again, to develop that concept of what's good enough. So, what is enough to meet the standards? And you can discuss that with a colleague or a team leader. Is 80% good enough? Is the extra 20% just something that I will notice? Or will anybody get the benefit of it? So if I spend longer on this to add in these extra pieces, is that actually not really a good use of my time? Should I be moving on to something else? So the tip is to know how long your task should take, and that may take time to develop that knowledge. But if you have it in your mind that it's important to do it, then over the next few weeks, you can start just noting and saying, that took me half an hour, that took me an hour. This type of request, when it comes up, typically takes this long. It can take you time to develop this knowledge, but it's really beneficial if you do, because then it starts to help you to keep control of your time, to plan your time better, and to be able to maybe move on and get to more tasks in the day without feeling guilty. That's our tip number 3, and it adds in with our other tips in our 5 top tips. Tomorrow we'll be moving on to talk about distractions. So, how we can prevent ourselves getting distracted by other things and sticking to the plan that we had planned to do for the day. So, tune in again tomorrow and we'll have tip number 4 in our next video.